In this video, I'll be going over the best poses of current classic physique competitors. This video complements the one I did on the worst poses, and I always enjoy talking about these guys in a more positive light. Like always, if I did forget a competitor, please let me know down below, since I try to focus on the same top competitors to keep things pretty standard. Also, there are 5 mandatory poses: the front double, side chest, rear double, ab and thigh, and favorite classic shot, so keep that all in mind. Starting off is Brion Ansley, and I think his rear double is by far his best pose by a pretty wide margin. The first thing I notice is the incredible muscle maturity and detail in his back. Every line is etched in, and the density he brings here is on another level. His arms frame the pose perfectly with great detail and peak, and I think his hamstrings and glutes are really underrated because the detail and separation there are just amazing. What makes this pose even more effective is that it hides one of his biggest weaknesses. From the front, his quads are definitely not the most impressive, but from behind, his legs look very balanced and powerful. His proportions and flow overall make this one of the most complete rear doubles right now, and considering the level of competition and detail as well as muscularity that he's able to bring at this age, it makes the pose even more impressive in my opinion. Next is Kalisinski, and while he definitely has a lot of impressive signature classic poses, I think his ab and thigh is probably his best and one of his most underrated ones. His abs are very sharp and symmetrical, his quads have great shape and separation, and his taper ties it all together. On top of that, he can hit an excellent vacuum in this pose, which really completes that classic look. It's not the flashiest pose in his arsenal, but I definitely think that's part of why it's so impressive. It comes across as very clean, balanced, and effortless, and he really captures that traditional classic silhouette. It also plays to his strengths by hiding areas like the back and the arms, which are definitely not as impressive for him, and structurally, he does not look as narrow as he would in some other shots. In my opinion, this is one of the clearest examples of how simplicity, when done right, can be just as impactful as the more dramatic poses. Now we have Jose Manuel, and for him, the rear double is by far his best pose. I would argue that he has the best condition right now, with deep, grainy, and fully separated lines that run through every single muscle. Aesthetics have definitely never been his calling card, but in this pose that really does not matter. Historically, some of the best rear doubles of all time have come from physiques that were not the most aesthetic, and Jose fits that mold perfectly. I feel confident in saying that his hamstrings are probably the best in the entire division, with insane size and razor-sharp detail. His back is ridiculously wide, thick, and dialed in, and his arms frame the pose pretty well without taking away from the rest of the pose. Even his usual weaknesses like the quads and a wider waist are completely hidden here, which only makes the pose that much stronger. When he hits this shot, everything from the traps to the hamstrings and the lats, really everything comes alive, and it's one of the most dominant rear doubles you'll see on a classic stage today. Up next is Logan Franklin, and because he has so many impressive poses thanks to his skill as a very artistic poser, I had to go with a classic shot for him, the crucifix pose. This one shows off everything you want to see in a classic physique division. His waist is small and pulled in with a perfect vacuum, his arms and legs are very balanced and in proportion, and the lats flare out wide to give him a very commanding aura. The silhouette he creates feels straight out of the golden era, and that is something Logan has always been excellent at capturing. I think you could definitely make a case for several of his poses being his best, because his presentation is that good, but to me this one really embodies what classic physique is all about. It looks effortless and instantly recognizable as the work of a true posing master. Also, if you guys are enjoying the video so far, a like and sub would be awesome as it helps out the channel so much. Now we have Justin Batarina, and I think his front double is by far his best pose. He has some of the widest clavicles in the entire division, and when you combine that with a small vacuumed waist, it sets up a very impressive taper. His lats flare out wide and full, giving him that X-frame that classic is known for. The quads also match the upper body perfectly, with enough size and shape to keep the balance from top to bottom. Structurally, this is a pose that plays to all of his strong attributes. His height works in his favor here, stretching out the silhouette without making him look too lanky. and the proportions give off a look that is almost reminiscent of a wider sebum. Everything comes together cleanly, and it's one of those poses where his frame really shines in, and it's definitely one of the most impressive in my opinion. Next is Nile Darwin, and in my opinion, his front double might be the best in the entire division right now, especially from a purely aesthetic standpoint. I've not seen a physique in a long time that leaves you in awe in almost every pose, but this shot takes it to another level. His waist is so small it looks non-existent, and it is easily half the width of his clavicles, which creates an insane taper. On top of that, his arms and legs are both outstanding, and when he nails his condition, the entire pose looks like something out of a poster or out of a cartoon. It's just absolutely insane. The proportions, the flow, the balance, they are all just about perfect. And honestly, if the Mr. Olympia was judged on this pose alone, I would bet a lot of money that he would take the title based off of that. It is really that dominant and visually striking, and personally, he is one of my favorite newcomers when it comes to being at that top level of the division. Coming up, we have Terrence Ruffin, who is probably my favorite poser in the entire division. Every time he steps on stage, it feels like he's really elevated his posing game. While he definitely has countless artistic shots that could be considered his best pose, I think his standout pose is actually a mandatory, and it might be basic, but I would say it's the front double. In the past, this pose was definitely not one of his best, far from it, but now it is actually incredibly balanced and refined. Nothing in this shot overpowers anything else. His quads and arms are now perfectly in sync, his waist is very tight, and his vacuum ties beautifully into his wide, flaring lats. Even though it is a standard mandatory, the way he hits it feels very thoughtful and deliberate, as if every small detail has been planned very thoroughly. It may seem simple in concept, but with the physique and presentation he brings, it becomes one of the most complete and polished poses you will see on him. Now we have Wesley Vissers, and I would go with his most muscular, which he often saves for the end of his routine. I think this pose is incredibly underrated, but it works perfectly for him because it hides almost all of his weaknesses. When he bends down into it, his quads look much stronger, and his waist is completely overshadowed by his massive, deeply strided chest. That chest alone is one of the most underrated in the division, and when you add his arms and shoulders, which are some of the biggest and best in the entire division as well, the pose becomes a true standout. His entire physique seems to come alive, and the confidence he brings when he hits it only makes it that much more powerful. It is one of those shots where everything clicks, and it leaves a lasting impression. Although it's technically not a mandatory pose, the way he hits it is very much reminiscent of the way Golden Era competitors would, so I guess it can fit into the favorite classic pose. Up next is Livingston Lavinho, and please let me know down below if I pronounced it right. I know a lot of you guys were giving me some, feedback for how I pronounced the name, so please let me know. And for him, I would definitely say the front double is probably his best pose. It is a simple choice, but when a pose works this well, there's no need to overthink it. He has some of the freakiest proportions in the division right now, a crazy small waist, incredibly wide lats and clavicles, and arms that perfectly balance the frame. His quads match the upper body width and size, giving him an X-frame and silhouette that can rival the very best. Everything about this shot screams balance and symmetry, and there's nothing in it that takes away from the overall picture. This is the kind of pose that will make him extremely dangerous at the highest level, and I think as he continues to refine his physique, it will only get better. Coming up is Grego, and I think his best pose is the single bicep classic shot. This pose works so well for him because it completely hides that lat asymmetry that can show up in other shots, like the front lat spread for example. His waist is tight and pulled into a clean semi-vacuum, and the arm that is lowered into a kind of front lat spread position is perfectly framed by a full, well-developed lat. The quads are also pretty strong and balanced, and the overall silhouette has that polished aesthetic look. His arm in the flex position has a great amount of shape and size, and nothing in this pose feels out of place. While he definitely has some imbalances that need to be worked on, and some other areas to bring up in the future, this one hides all of that. In this shot, I honestly cannot point to a single flaw. It is as complete and well presented as it could be, and it's definitely one of my favorite renditions of this pose. Next is Horse MD, and I think his front double is his best pose. Even with a slightly wider waist, the way he presents the pose, with a subtle tilt at the hip, really makes the shot flow nicely. His massive quads grab your attention right away, and his arms have a nice amount of peak and separation, which balances out the pose. What I like about this shot the most is that it has a flow that feels reminiscent of the golden era when a slightly wider waist was not really seen as a huge flaw, I would say, but more so a part of a very powerful physique. His arms are definitely a standout feature for me, even though they do have a bit of asymmetry in the biceps, and the pose as a whole hides a lot of his weaker areas, like the back. While there are definitely poses that he can still refine, this one shows his physique at its absolute most complete, and he definitely has time to continue refining his overall look. Now we go to Raone Dino, and while he is extremely complete across the board, I think his crucifix pose is absolutely insane on him. Any arm-dominant shot like this is going to look crazy when he hits it, but this one, in my opinion, shows off his complete arm development the best. His forearms are thick and detailed, his triceps and biceps have long, very full insertions, and everything ties perfectly into his very small waist. From there, your eyes go to his massive, fully swept quads, which frame the pose beautifully, and his lats add just enough width without sacrificing any attention away from those arms. Raone barely has any muscular flaws to begin with, but from the front, he has always been at his most impressive. This pose not only delivers that wow factor in those arms, but also shows his very complete, refined aesthetic at the very highest level. Here is Michael Dabul, and I think his best pose is the hands together most muscular that he often hits near the end of his routine. He's not the most aesthetic competitor or the most fluid poser, but this shot really brings out some of his most underrated qualities. His conditioning in this pose is always gnarly, with sharp detail in the arms, delts, chest, and even the midsection. His quads have excellent separation and just enough size and sweep to balance out that top half, which gives the pose a very strong overall balance. Another thing I like about this pose is that he does not look flat here, something that can definitely be an issue for him when he comes extremely shredded, which is often the case. Instead, everything is pretty full and detailed at the same time. It is a powerful, no-nonsense type of pose for him, and he always uses it to finish a pretty strong routine. Coming up is Hune Park, and I think his best pose is his signature single bicep classic shot. It is a pose that really plays to his strengths while hiding all his weaknesses, like his narrower structure and less dominant backside. His arm development is pretty solid, I would say, but what makes this pose a real standout is the condition he brings, especially in those quads. I want to say that his legs are definitely underrated from every angle, but in the quads specifically and in this pose here, they are always fully striated and feathered, and that definitely adds some insanity to the pose. That tight vacuumed waistline also flows smoothly into a balanced taper, and the silhouette he has is definitely polished and refined, and fits perfectly in the classic standard. The pose also has effortless presentation that makes it look natural on him, which is not something every competitor can say. I think this is one of his favorite poses for a reason, and he definitely looks very confident when he hits it, and in my opinion, it suits him better than really anything else he hits on stage. Although I forgot to include Branch Chen in my last video, I definitely need to talk about him here because his front double is a clear standout. He probably has the freakiest looking quads in the entire division, with insane fullness and mass and also pretty good condition as well in them, and in this pose his upper body actually matches the lower body development. His arms are underrated, and they help create a pretty impressive silhouette overall. The small waist also ties very nicely into the flaring lats, giving him a balanced X-frame that looks both powerful and aesthetic. I've always been a big fan of the way he strikes this pose. It is very confident, it's polished, and it makes his proportions look even more extreme. For me, it's a show-stopping shot that embodies the modern definition of classic, with a perfect mix of proportion, flow, and sheer muscle. For Matteas Minagotchi, and please let me know again if I pronounced it right, you know guys, I'm trying here, I think his best pose right now is probably the front double as well, where he almost looks like a carbon copy of Sebum, maybe with a slightly narrower structure but even better arms. His proportions are ideal for this pose, with nothing overpowering anything else. The midsection is tight and balances out the kind of narrow frame, while the arms and quads have just enough size and shape to stand out without throwing off the flow. His lats round out the shot with that desirable, full, bulbous look that frames the vacuum perfectly. Everything ties together into a clean, classic silhouette that fits the division, and while he is definitely still refining his other poses, this one has been his calling card from day one, and in my opinion, it remains the one pose that defines his physique the best. Now we have a true challenge. It's kind of hard to choose a single best pose for Mike Somerfeld because he is a great example of having really good angles and no weaknesses that would really hold him back from winning. If I had to pick, I would say his rear double is probably his best shot. I know I have mentioned in other videos that his legs are probably his biggest weakness from behind, but the back itself is so good that it more than makes up for it. Honestly, it might be the best back we have ever seen in the classic physique division. His arms and delts from behind are also outstanding and frame the back perfectly. The glutes and hamstrings have solid separation and detail. It is really just the hamstrings that could use a lot more size. The quads have even managed to contribute here, adding some sweep and mass that shows through from behind. But the real showstopper is obviously the back. From the traps to the lats to the spinal erectors and teres, everything is fully developed, dense, and very detailed. I even think he beat out Sebum in this pose at the 2024 Olympia, which says a lot given how refined Sebum's rear double is. People always say shows are won from behind, and in my opinion, Mike's rear double is definitely proof of that. Finally, where would you even begin when it comes to Chris Bumstead? Every single pose he hits, even what I would consider his weakest, like the ab and thigh, is still basically picture perfect in the division. His front double biceps has insane taper with a tight vacuum, perfectly balanced arms and quads at this point, and a shape that is instantly recognizable as the standard. The front lat spread is on another level, easily the best in the entire division, and it has that same commanding presence you would see on someone like Dorian Yates, only with a smaller, more streamlined aesthetic flow. His rear double was basically untouchable for years before Mike Somerfeld pushed him in it, and even now it remains one of the most complete and polished versions the division has ever seen. On top of that, his favorite classic shots have all become instantly iconic, to the point where people try to replicate them on stage and in the gym. In my opinion though, his true best shot, the one that can transcend across any division and look absolutely incredible to anyone anywhere, has got to be his side chest. He has essentially perfected this pose, and it might be one of the most aesthetic, balanced, and refined in the entire history of bodybuilding. Sure, it would never overpower the sheer mass of someone like Ronnie, Big Ramy, or Jay, or ever be as iconic as Arnold in this pose, but in terms of presentation and aesthetics, many fans and even experts agree that he is basically unmatched. The chest, the arm, the side leg, midsection, every single part of his physique, and the posing execution on top of that all come together seamlessly. It is a pose that defines why Chris Bumstead is the face of classic, and in my opinion, I don't think we're going to see a side chest as beautiful in the years to come. Anyways, that about does it for this video. I hope none of my takes were too controversial, but if you guys, enjoyed this video, please let me know down below in the comments. If you did disagree, please let me know as well. With that all being said, I do hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.